Hey you guys, Erin here. I am back with another moon update for you. Today I'm going to be talking about the last new moon of 2024. Now this new moon takes place on Monday, December 30th. It peaks at 2:26 p.m. Pacific time, and this takes place in the sign of Capricorn, 9 degrees Capricorn. So you guys know the routine. This is a time to manifest new beginnings and growth that are related to this sign of Capricorn. What I like about this is that this new moon takes place like a day and a half before we go into the new Gregorian year of 2025. I know a lot of people like to set intentions when we're going into a new year. And this new moon in Capricorn, the sign of ambition and structure and all kinds of wonderful things can come out of this if we really work with this energy. So what I'm going to do in this recording is I'm going to break down the sign of Capricorn for you in pretty good detail. Of course, I will be pulling up the chart and showing you all the other astrological forces we are receiving at the time of this new moon. And I will also be talking about certain parts of the body that are ruled by the sign of Capricorn, because these parts of our body become basically sensitized anytime anything up in the sky is transiting through the sign of Capricorn. And for this new moon, we do have sun and moon, of course, in the sign of Capricorn. So it's a good idea to pay a little extra attention to these parts of our body. So with that said, I will be mentioning some potential remedies or ways to work with these parts of our body during this kind of transit. And I will also be talking about gemstones that resonate well with the sign of Capricorn. What I've been doing every single new moon since June of 2016. I pull out my journal. I write down the growth that I want to experience that's related to that zodiac sign. If you're somewhat familiar with your natal chart, or if you've had a reading with me, you can go back and review the video recording to see which area of your own life this specifically manifests for you. Which house in your natal chart is this coming through? If that's too much for you, that's okay. Just take a step back and focus on the sign of Capricorn in and of itself. So I write down that growth that I want to experience. I apply it to the area of my own life that it's coming through. And then I like to take a few gemstones that resonate well with that zodiac sign or just the overall astrological forces we're receiving and put them on top of my journal and find a special place for my journal. Preferably, I like to do this a few hours leading up to the new moon. If you're getting this, you're seeing this, a couple days after the new moon, then it's still better late than never. And I would not continue to do this for so many years now, because it's a little bit of time consuming. I mean, I don't go crazy. It's usually like literally a page. My journal is not very big. And I just take a page and write it down. But yes, it's a little time consuming, but I wouldn't continue to do it if I didn't see results coming from it, such incredible results coming from it. And that's why I like to share this information with you guys. Okay, so let's start out by talking about this sign of Capricorn. Capricorn is what we call the cardinal earth sign. When I say cardinal, I'm talking about a force that comes through. But what's great about this sign of Capricorn is that it's in the element of earth. Okay, so it's not a force that's going to overexert itself. It's a steady, stable force that comes through with this sign of Capricorn. It's ruled by Saturn. Saturn is really what influences things like discipline and responsibilities and structure and that sort of thing. Its Saturnian influence can be sometimes a little rigid, and this sign of Capricorn certainly does not mean everybody who's a Capricorn is going to be like this, because there's so much more to our natal chart other than just our sun sign. But it can have this tendency to be rigid with the goal setting. Okay. Now, it's most commonly represented by the mountain goat. Traditionally, it's a sea goat, but I really do feel like the mountain goat helps people understand this Capricornian influence, because the mountain goat wants to get to the top of the mountain and be on top like a boss, okay? A lot of us have seen these mountain goats literally taking advantage of every single foothold to get to the top of the mountain, okay? This sign is very strongly associated with things like authority. In fact, out of all the zodiac signs, the sign of Capricorn is the one that's most directly associated with things like government, okay? A lot of people who've got really good, strong Capricorn energy in their natal chart, you'll notice they're the ones that make it to the top of corporate, or they build their own business, that sort of thing. The motto for the sign of Capricorn is I use. Okay, I have also seen in some books, I build for the sign of Capricorn. And I really think I can definitely understand both, but I really would say with confidence, I use is more like the traditional motto for the sign of Capricorn. But when I say I could see it being both, it's like the sign of Capricorn will use what it already has accessible, like what's in the environment already for you, to build the first few steps of what you're trying to build. And I'm not necessarily just referring to building something with a hammer and nails. I know a lot of people are building online businesses right now. That's just one example of many. So it's like, instead of thinking, well, gosh, I can't do that because I don't have the money to buy the thing that I need to start this, or I don't have enough followers to start this, or, whatever it is, just using what you already have in your environment to start the quote unquote structure, okay, to build what you really want and go after the goal strategically so that you can have the status that you're seeking, that sort of thing. It's very Capricornian energy. Okay, so how do you want to grow in these ways? How do you want to grow in this? What do you really want to build for yourself in this year of 2025? What do you want to accomplish in this year of 2025? Approximately 6 months from now, we'll have the full moon in the sign of Capricorn. That would be the peak of this growth cycle. Okay, so let's go ahead and pull up the chart here and start going through some of these aspects of this new moon. Okay, so again, this is taking place on Monday, December 30th, 2024 at 2:26 p.m. Pacific time. You might want to see what time this is coming through for your own time zone. If you're new here, I work with geocentric Western astrology. So with that said, we put Earth right here in the middle of this thing. And this is basically a snapshot of what we call the tropical zodiac at the time of this new moon. These things right here are the symbols for all the planets and the celestial bodies. Okay, like here's the sun and here's the moon. And when we go in the wheel just a little ways, these things are the symbols or the glyphs for the zodiac signs that all those planets and celestial bodies will be beaming through onto Earth at the time of this new moon. Okay, so let's start here. Here's the sun, here's the moon. In Western astrology, it's like the sun is the father, the moon is the mother. Well, every single time we have a new moon, the moon transits over the sun, okay? Whatever the moon is transiting over, whatever she's crossing over, she's distributing the influence of that particular celestial body. Okay, so it's when we think about the moon as the mother, the sun is the father, it's almost like the moon is crossing over the father and distributing. It's almost like making this fertility for the growth of this Capricornian influence, okay? Now, at 9 degrees Capricorn, this is in the first decan, just very close to the second, but this is still in the first decan of that Capricornian influence. So with that said, it's pretty pure Capricornian energy. It's not really blending in with the other earth signs yet, okay? Now, and if you take the time to look this up in your own location, you might find, of course, the sun and the moon are still going to be at 9 degrees Capricorn, but let's say you live over in New York or something, you might see that they're down here, but they'll still be coming through 9 degrees Capricorn. Okay, so I'm going to start with this right here is Saturn, which again, Saturn rules Capricorn. So Saturn's like the ruler of this new moon. Saturn's like the lord of this new moon. And what we see here, these green lines that are going from here to here, those are sextile aspects, which basically create opportunity. Not only that, but they're approaching, meaning so the evening of this new moon, the moon will be making an exact sextile to Saturn. And about 4.5 days after this new moon, the sun would be making an exact sextile or opportunistic connection with Saturn. It's like the sun and the moon are beaming these rays of opportunity towards Saturn, which is great because, again, Saturn's the ruler of this new moon. But what we see is Saturn coming through the sign of Pisces. So Pisces is like the mystic, okay? Pisces is the flowy spiritual energy of the zodiac. So with that said, we're talking about the sign of Capricorn and structure and ambition and responsibilities and, those sorts of things. But putting in some sort of like a twist of faith into this, of course, that can be interpreted in so many different ways. Everybody's got their own little perspective of, what kind of spiritual opportunities we want to take care of. But really, Saturn's basically, if I'm going to be getting really technical here, Saturn's coming through the sign of Pisces until February 2026. But next year in 2025, Saturn will actually peek into the sign of Aries briefly, but then we'll retrograde back. I already made a video about 2025. You can go back and review that if you'd like. It's somewhere on my channel, probably 2 videos back. But so with that said, really with Saturn going through Pisces, I think it's especially important that we all take, our spiritual practices to a serious level. But that's what Saturn beaming through Pisces is all about. Can definitely have a little bit to do with feeling the sorrows in the world. The sign of Pisces could be a little bit weepy, and Saturn is certainly not a optimistic energy. Saturn, again, he's cold and rigid. And so that definitely, if this is hitting something in your chart, if you got something in your chart near 14 degrees Pisces, you might be, it depends on what it is that is in your chart. Let's say if it's your sun, you might be all of a sudden like, why is everything in my life, so structured? Or why can't I just go out and have a good time right now? Saturn's saying you got to take care of your responsibilities, especially if it's something that connects to some kind of a spiritual influence. Okay. Maybe it's the metaphysical connection with gemstones or, whatever it is. I know tarot is becoming a very, very popular theme right now. Something along those lines. Okay. And even could potentially even be something that has to do with astrology. I know more and more people are learning astrology. And in my opinion, astrology is by no means just a spiritual practice. It's a very technical and practical craft, but there is a spiritual side to it, and maybe taking on not just the responsibilities, but the seriousness of that study. Whatever it is, whatever you're studying that is somewhat of a spiritual nature. Okay, so there's that. Now, let's jump on over here and talk about Mercury going through Sag. So Mercury has a very big influence on our nervous system. Mercury is basically, as you're receiving information right now, as you're listening to me talk, no matter what we're doing, we're receiving information. But as you're listening to me talk, the information is going into your mental function. It's like going through your nervous system. That's Mercury bringing that information in, the intake. But then that information is stored somewhere in your consciousness. And when you want, let's say you watching this video right now, and then you want to go tell your friend about it tomorrow, Mercury finds that file of information and brings it back out for the output of that information. Okay, so Mercury is clearly a very busy character at all times. In the sign of Sagittarius, this is kind of funny because, you could call Mercury debilitated in the sign of Sagittarius. That's because over here, opposite Sagittarius is Gemini, and that's Mercury's sign. So he's in the opposite sign of his own home. But Sagittarius is it's fiery and adaptable. It's wildfire. Okay, so Mercury's going like, oh, I'm going here. Oh, no, but over here in a fiery way. If you've got something in your natal chart near 18 degrees Sagittarius, you might notice that, information's coming in quick and going back out. And that sort of thing could be going on. Again, it depends on what it is you have in your natal chart near 18 degrees Sagittarius. But that's definitely something that could bring that kind of an influence in. But what I love about this is that here we see this really, really strong trine going from Mercury in Sagittarius, which again, Sagittarius is optimistic. Okay. Sagittarius is the optimist of adventure. Okay. And it's beaming this ray right at Chiron. Neither of these guys are in retrograde, so that's nice. Chiron, the wounded healer, coming through Aries, the warrior, the sign of self. So we've got some healing energy that can come in here, especially if you've got something in your natal chart near 19 degrees Aries. Boy, it depends on what it is, but if you've got something very prominent near 19 degrees Aries, it's probably been a very game-changing year of healing for you, because that's where that total solar eclipse hit back in April, is at 19 degrees Aries. So you might be on, some sort of a healing journey, and all of a sudden, maybe you come up with new ideas to, for this journey of healing as Mercury is sending harmonious rays over to Chiron. So that's something else to think about. Not only that, but these are Sagittarius is fire, Aries is fire. So it's like fiery. Fire is very much associated with energy in Western astrology. So having the energy to go after that healing journey, that sort of thing could be going on. Okay, let's see here. Next, we'll go up here to Venus. So Venus has, I think, 3 or 4 more days in the sign of Aquarius after this new moon. I think Venus moves into Pisces on January 3rd. But so she's a little cold right now in the sign of Aquarius. Venus is the influencer of love and beauty and harmony and everybody getting along. Venus is the planet of love, okay? And the sign of Aquarius is not necessarily a romantic energy. Aquarius is, and that doesn't mean just because somebody's an Aquarius, they can't be romantic, but because again, there's so much more to our natal charts. But the sign of Aquarius wants the idea rather than the emotion. It wants to learn the lesson. The sign of Aquarius is very hyper intellectual energy. Okay, so let's look at it this way. If you have something in your natal chart near 26 degrees Aquarius, Venus might be bringing you some soothing to whatever that planet or celestial body is, because that's what Venus's job is. But as an overall, like for the collective, this could be something like maybe feeling a little bit more of a passion. The sign of Aquarius can also have things that have a little bit of a association with astrology. The passion, Venus is saying, hey, I love that to learn the scientific side of this, the technical side of this, or come up with new ideas with this thing that we're studying, that sort of thing. Venus going through Aquarius can make, if you've got it in your natal chart, a lot of these people will be attracted to things. I mean, the motto for the sign of Aquarius is I know. Okay, it's the one that thinks outside the box. It's the inventor, or something like the very innovative or progressive energy. So with Venus, influencer of love coming through there, these people, or just again, if this is hitting something in your chart, you might be, all of a sudden I have this passion to learn something that's of intellect, something that's hyper intellectual, things that are idealistic, or again, thinking outside of the box. Okay, so there's that. Now let's go. I'm trying to decide if I should go to Mars and Pluto now. I guess I should. So here's Mars, which is in retrograde. And in fact, Mars moves back into the sign of Cancer just, I think it's 3 days after this new moon. So Mars is in retrograde, going through the sign of Leo. Again, just for another few days after this new moon. But for this new moon, Mars, the planet of war. Mars is aggressive and dominant, okay? Mars rules our muscles, all the things that make us take action, our adrenal glands. But he's driving backwards, okay? So if we think about Mars, okay, the planet of war, which that don't mean to make Mars sound bad. We absolutely need Mars. Not only that, but Mars exalts in Capricorn. So there's also a connection there. But Mars is an aggressive energy. And if we think about an aggressive guy, just a super Martian kind of guy, and he's got his muscle car in reverse and he's driving backwards, that's kind of what Mars is doing right now, especially in the sign of Leo. Now, this is incredible willpower. If you've got something in your natal chart near 2 degrees Leo, you might be feeling incredible strength and willpower, but at the same time, be very, very mindful and careful with what you're putting into action, because Mars is in retrograde. But what we've got going on here is a very strong opposition going up here to Pluto, which Pluto is also an aggressive energy. Okay, Pluto's the lord of the underworld. Pluto, basically what Pluto does is he influences a degeneration and then regeneration. And often if we flow through that transformational process with as much grace as possible, even though it's usually if you've got anything in your natal chart near 1 degrees Aquarius, my goodness, you are definitely going through some sort of a death and rebirth process. I don't necessarily mean somebody dying. It certainly can be applied to that, but it's more like something in your life is being brought to death, which is generally speaking not a very fun process. Pluto hits the psyche. Okay, but Pluto also influences our spiritual drive, our spiritual willpower. And again, the sign of Aquarius it's progressive. It's the one that comes up with the new ideas. Okay, so that's maybe even potentially, let's say, for example, if you've got maybe something like Mercury near 1 degree Aquarius, it could be your mind that's going like, oh my God, I thought I had this whole thing figured out, whatever it is, your belief system or whatever, some sort of a hypothesis of sorts. And all of a sudden that whole thing just crumbles down and you are going to rebuild a new whatever that is that we're speaking of here. But it's really harsh right now. I mean, Mars opposition Pluto, both in fixed signs. This is going on for a while because Mars, again, is going to retrograde way back here into the earlier degrees of Cancer and then come back and make this opposition with Pluto again. I think that's the next time is in April of maybe March of 2025. But this is, picture the ruler of the underworld, Pluto, Hades in Greek mythology, aggressive nature, beaming a ray of opposition. It's almost like they're battling each other with Mars, the planet of war or the god of war. Okay, so this is really, really strong stuff going on here. Again, if you got anything in your natal chart near 1 degree Aquarius, I'm going to say between 0 and 6 degrees Aquarius, or between 0 and 6 degrees Leo, or even squaring these guys near 1 or 0 to 6 degrees Taurus, or 0 or to 6 degrees Scorpio. There's a lot of probably almost like what for some people could feel unbearable. Just, oh my God, why am I going through this? But just understand that you're being influenced with something that's putting you through a very, very powerful transformational process. Okay, so there's that. Now, let's go up here and let's go to Jupiter. Okay, so Jupiter, Mr. Benefic. Okay, Jupiter is the influencer of abundance and luck and wisdom and expansion of things. Okay, Jupiter is the great benefic. Okay, Jupiter can have a lot to do with abundance coming to you. If you've got something in your natal chart near 13 degrees Gemini, depending on what it is, Jupiter might be expanding your consciousness, or Jupiter might be bringing you luck, might be bringing you wisdom, might be bringing you, especially something that, if it is, again, like studying something, there's so much in this chart that says, I mean, of course, it's really the new moon in Capricorn, but there's so many other little aspects in this chart that say, hey, let's study some stuff. Let's combine the intellect and the wisdom together. A lot of that, again, has to do with Jupiter going through Gemini, but especially since it's like, here's Mercury, which again rules the sign of Gemini. So he's in the opposite of his own home, while Jupiter here rules the sign of Sagittarius and is also in the opposite sign of their own home. And together, these guys are saying, it depends on how this is hitting your own natal chart, but this does say, it's like Gemini is intellect and Sagittarius is more like wisdom. Just on the flip side of that, Mercury is more like intellect versus Jupiter is more like wisdom, the grand big picture of things. It's almost like zoning in on all the little facts, but also taking in the whole grand big picture. This could also have to do with things that are faith-based. Okay, so there's that. Now, let's talk about Uranus here. So Uranus retrograding through the sign of Taurus. Now, it is said that Uranus is like out of all of them when in retrograde, out of all, anything that, can retrograde, when Uranus retrogrades, it's the most abrupt, it's the most unpredictable, it's the most spasmodic, it's the most, Uranus is electrical. Uranus is, it's like getting electrified or getting electrocuted with Uranus. If this is hitting something in your chart, where I'm going with this is that if you've got something near 23 degrees Taurus in your natal chart, there's something coming through that could be very unpredictable. Be very mindful about working with electronics or, digital things. That sort of thing can go a little bit wacky when Uranus is in retrograde, especially, again, if it's hitting something in your own natal chart. Okay, so there's that. And by the way, Uranus this is another one. This is also in a video that I made previously. It's like, I forget what I titled it, but it's something like upcoming 2025 astrological forecast or something like that. But I go into pretty good detail about how Uranus is going through the sign of Taurus, which Uranus is also very debilitated in the sign of Taurus. The reason why, Taurus wants things slow and steady and patient and calm. It's the fixed earth sign. And this is in part why it's debilitated. Uranus, again, is more like, and so they don't flow so well together. But this sign of Taurus can also, it could be associated with money and finances. I mean, the abrupt, massive changes we've been seeing going on with banking systems, digital currencies, all sorts of things like that. But Uranus will peek into the sign of Gemini next year, but again, only briefly, and then we'll retrograde back into the sign of Taurus. When anything does that, when any planet it moves into a new sign and then retrogrades back and then moves into the next sign over again, it's working with extreme force. That's a very, very powerful point between any two zodiac signs, a planet moving forward, then retrograding back, then moving forward again. It's in part why we've had a lot of turbulence over these last 4 years, because Pluto's been kind of tick-tocking back and forth between Capricorn, Aquarius, Capricorn, Aquarius. Okay, so there's that. We already talked about Chiron. Let's talk about these nodes. Okay, so the nodes are finishing up in these zodiac signs. Here's the south node of 1 degree Libra, and the nodes basically go backwards. They're almost always in retrograde, okay? And so the south node is so close to getting in the sign of Virgo. That happens, I think it's January 11th. And then we've got the north node here going through the sign of Aries. They would change signs on the same day. I believe it's January 11th. It's somewhere around that. So the north node's been pumping energy in through that sign of Aries, okay? North node, that's what it does. It pumps energy in. The south node takes energy away, okay? And so personally, I'm a little bit excited for these guys to change zodiac signs because that sign of Libra is so lovely and charming. It's a sign of justice and fairness. And we've had the drain point, the south node going through the sign of Libra since July of 2023, and it's almost done there. But anything that relates to this sign of Libra, relationships, again, balance or harmony or charm or beauty even, especially if you have something in your natal chart near 1 degrees Libra, it's the last opportunity that south node is draining it away. Be thinking about on a Libra qualities, is there something you want to let go of that's related to that sign of Libra, and let it drain out between now and say halfway through January. And then again, Aries is aggressive. Aries is the warrior. And we've had the north node just pumping that aggressive energy into that sign of Aries again since July of 2023, but it's almost done. So the north node is going to move into the sign of Pisces, and the south node is going to move into the sign of Virgo. I might even just make a little separate video about that to go into further detail. Okay, so did we cover everybody? I think we did. Let's go ahead and talk about body parts. Okay, so the sign of Capricorn kind of rules the structure of the body. It's the bones. I mean, it rules the knees. Definitely the sign of Capricorn, when we think about the shape of the body going down, the sign of Capricorn rules the knees. You might want to be a little bit careful with your knees, especially if you've got something in your natal chart that's in the sign of Capricorn. But it really rules, it's like Saturn rules minerals. Again, Capricorn's ruler, Saturn rules minerals. The skeletal system is made up of minerals. That's very much what this sign of Capricorn rules, is the bones. Even a little bit of an influence on the teeth. Capricorn also rules gallbladder. Capricorn also has an influence on the skin, because the skin is what holds the body together. This is the sign of structure. Okay, the skin is definitely a part of the structure of our body. So we might want to be a little bit careful with these parts of our body. Not only that, but the sign of Capricorn could be very drying. Not only that, but with Venus going through Aquarius, there may be, especially if you already have potential for having like a dry, just dry skin period. You might want to pay a little extra attention to this. Now, when it comes to the bones, first of all, even something like dandelion can help support the bones. I think it's the silica in the dandelions that can support the bones. And I'm not a doctor, and I'm not offering any kind of medical advice. These are just things that I've learned from my wonderful teachers over the years. Another one is horsetail. Horsetail, I think, has silicone. Is that right? Let me see if I can look at my notes up here. Okay, so yeah, the horsetail's got silica, and dandelions have silicone. Dandelion also contains calcium, which can be really good for the bones. Okay, so both of those can be lovely for the bones. But I also wanted to mention this. This is something called Shilajit. There's a lot of hype around Shilajit right now, and I've been familiar with it for quite some time now. And it's great. It's super detoxifying, but it's also packed with minerals. It can be really good for the bones and the joints, and really the skin too. I mean, it's just a really, really, it's like a resin. I don't want to open this because it can get kind of messy. It's a very, very thick kind of gooey dark brown stuff. And you just put it in some tea every single morning. I make my green tea. I put a little, just like the size of a pea of the Shilajit. I do recommend pure black Shilajit. I'll leave a link for this in the description. Put a little pea size of the Shilajit in my green tea, and then I put a teeny bit of a blend of mushroom powders, cordyceps and turkey tails and that sort of thing. And it seems to be keeping me decently healthy. So there's that. But for the skin, okay. I mean, externally, like I said, this Capricorn energy, it could be kind of a drying energy. Personally, I just like using olive oil or coconut oil on my skin. But another one to mention here is burdock root tea. That's what I usually do, is a burdock tea, which not everybody likes the taste of burdock tea. Oh my gosh, I just had a thought because I really like the flavor of Shilajit. And I know a lot of people do. It's just earthy, a little bit bitter, and it's just so good, especially if you're just putting a little bit of honey in whatever you're putting with. But burdock, I'm thinking if you made burdock root tea and put the Shilajit in there, that would be amazing. Burdock opens up the lipid channels and helps bring moisture from the inside of your body out to the skin. Okay, instead of taking, something and applying it to your skin, you're actually getting the moisture coming from inside of your body with burdock root. Okay, and then I don't necessarily want to go super deep on the gallbladder here. Personally, many years ago, this must have been almost 20 years ago. Oh my gosh, that I had my gallbladder removed. And I did that because I had gallstones and I didn't know that there was other ways to take care of gallstones other than having it surgically removed. So unfortunately, I don't have a gallbladder. I really wish I would have known the things that I know now back then. But there's a lot of different ways to help support the gallbladder and flush out gallstones. There is a book that it's called The Amazing Liver and Gallbladder Flush. I cannot remember the author of that book right now, but you should be able to find it just with putting in do a search for that. The Amazing Gallbladder and Liver Flush. I believe that's what it's called. Really good for taking care of it. Because if a lot of people, especially if you got something going on in the sign of Leo and in the sign of Capricorn, say you've got the two malefics, Mars and Saturn, in those signs, something like that, there can a very, very strong potential for gallbladder issues. And so just might want to be a little bit mindful of that. Okay, so now gemstones, the dedicated zodiacal birthstone for the sign of Capricorn is garnet. Okay, so I love garnet. Garnet's grounding, but it's also said to provide that ambition to go after the thing that you want to go after, but in this, rather than this forceful, fiery way, it's rather okay, again, it's with stability, going after the goal with stability. Garnet can provide a really good influence for that. Another one I'm going to mention here is right here is tiger's eye. Tiger's iron and tiger's eye both resonate well with the sign of Capricorn. This is one for willpower. Okay, tiger's eye can be really good, again, stable willpower. There's other stones. Ruby can be great for willpower, but that's more lightening things up with willpower, an optimistic willpower. The stones I'm showing you here are much more that Capricornian influence of the mountain goat that's going after it, taking advantage of all, the foothold, going up to the top of the mountain. Okay, and then last thing I'm going to mention here is Smoky Quartz. Okay, Smoky Quartz, I mean, a lot of people who don't even really know anything about gemstones, you'll walk into their house and they've got Smoky Quartz hanging around because it's a very, very common stone. One of my favorite things about Smoky Quartz is it's protective and it's an amplifier. Okay, if you're working with clear crystal quartz, that's pretty much purely an amplifier, versus Smoky Quartz provides the protection, but also amplifies the energy. Not only that, but it's also very cleansing for the home. So Smoky Quartz is definitely one of my favorites. You can always find a full extensive list. And then Malachite resonates beautifully with the sign of Capricorn. And if you don't have any of these gemstones, please do not feel like you are missing out on something. A new moon is a perfect time to manifest more gemstones into your life. Write that down in your journal. But again, you can find, if you're curious, a full extensive list of gemstones that resonate well with the sign of Capricorn below. I think I will leave that there. If you would like to schedule an astrology reading, please do visit erinwageastrology.com. You can schedule straight through my website. I do hope to hear from some of you. And until next time, namaste to all of you. Upcoming 2025.